Welcome to Start Your Dungeons. I'm Bryce.
I'm Adam.
And today we're going to look at something a little bit different than normal for miniature games. We're going to look at two different products, actually, and kind of compare the two of them for the Age of Sigmar 3rd Edition game. And the first one we're going to start with is the smaller of the two, the Warrior set, which is kind of their smaller introductory one. So Adam, talk us through, because this is your set, what all comes in the box?
So you get two little starter factions. You get the Auric Cruel Boys. You get the Killaboss and this little Stabgrot. You get 10 of the Gut Rippers. You get a Wizard of the Stormcast Eternals and some Vindictors.
Yep.
You get your War Scroll cards, 10 D6 dice, 10 little measurement rulers, a printed game mat. Get a lot of stuff. You get your little tiny rule book. It's a condensed version of the rule book that comes in the Dominion box. You get two of these rule reference sheets that have your heroic actions, command abilities. You get a book on constructing your models. Mm-hmm. And you get the book that has lore. It talks about, the different factions in the mortal realms. You get the little tutorial battle plans.
Mm-hmm.
They're very simple.
Yeah.
But and we'll talk about that as we go. But you get quite a bit. And one of the stranger things that you get in these smaller boxes, you also get that. I don't know if you can see the. It's way up there. I've got the old 2nd edition Stormstrike box. The interior box is actually terrain.
Right.
So all that comes in the box.
Right. So we got all this stuff in the box. Let's go through and do kind of our deep dive into the miniatures first. For this one, this kind of an updated one. Again, these are two new factions kind of for 3.0. Stormcast have been around, but this style of Stormcast where they move towards more of like the skinnier kind of look to them, not so chunky. Yeah, leaner kind of look to them. And then the Cruel Boys being a whole new Auric faction.
Also leaner.
Yeah, for, 3.0. Talk about quality. I mean, they're pretty nice, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is I actually prefer these models to the older Stormcast and the older Aurics.
I do like the new Stormcast. I think the new Stormcast are good. I like the Cruel Boys. I think some of their stuff may be a little too much for me at times, but from this set alone, I like all the models that are in it. It's a very dirty kind of. What I like about it is if you look at AOS, you have the Iron Jaws who are like the heavy armored Aurochs. You've got the Bone Splitters who are kind of like tribal sort of looking to them. They have a lot of like more paint and stuff. These kind of fit in the middle. They're slightly armored. They've got some like protection, but not like heavily armored.
Yeah.
So very cool ones. Talk about assembly. Are these push fit?
These are push fit. They were really easy to assemble. I didn't have any problems. This is actually my second set of these to do because you'll see in the next video. I've done Gut Rippers. I've done Vindictors. The only thing that I dislike about these models is they are very pointy and stabby, and sometimes if you're push fitting, you will start to hurt your fingers. You need to take some breaks.
Looking at you, Soul Raid for Warhammer Underworlds, you are way too spiky.
Yeah.
You are a pain to put together.
Yeah, but other than that, they're fine. The instructions are really clearly put together. It's just, this and this. You sandwich them together. You stick in the base. And it's very done.
Easy. Yeah. Kind of a nice thing. I think Games Workshop started with push fit, and it was okay. Yeah. It wasn't great. I think now, after many, many years of doing it, they've gotten a lot better with
Yeah,
it.
I definitely agree. I think they're getting this down to a like a smooth oiled machine, getting
Yeah,
these things cranked out and make them easier to put together.
absolutely. Talking about next, how much of this do you have to assemble to play the actual one?
I mean, it's you get several sprues, but so it's you get like 6 models over there, 12 models over here. I was able to put all these together, in an afternoon.
Right.
So it wasn't that much. If you just wanted to take the miniatures as they are, you can put them together and start with the basic rules that day.
Yeah.
It's not much. You
Right.
you really could, like take an afternoon, put them together and be playing that night.
Right. And in terms of assembly for them, you need your normal stuff. You need your snips, hobby knife, maybe some files. But the good thing is, because they are push fit, they don't need glue.
Yeah, there was one model in particular. It was, I don't remember which little dude it was, but there was one, and I actually did a really good job. There's one that has, like, on one of the pieces of leather, you need green stuff or some kind of way to fill the gap because it makes a pretty noticeable gap. And you don't have to, it, but it was something that I'm kind of picky about.
No, I can understand that. And I think a lot of times, sometimes that is something with push fit. You know, they are built to slot, but they're built to slot perfectly. And even if you have just a little bit, you can gap. And that's why I always recommend with push fit, shave a little bit of the end
Yep.
off and just make sure that it easily kind of fits together. As long as it slots in, it's fine, sort of thing. Talking about, let's talk about cheat sheets in this box. And I think that they've done actually a pretty good job with two different type of cheat sheets, with the rules reference one, which is that. And then the cards themselves for each unit, along with their
war
allegiance.
scrolls. Yeah, you've got your war scrolls, you've got your rules reference, and if you're familiar with the books, like the big faction,
tomes.
yeah, the big battle tomes. These come in the battle tomes, but having these things printed as cards, and you can buy these separately for a
Yes.
lot of factions. Not all
They're not
of them.
easy. They're not easy to find always.
Yeah.
They're a limited run usually when the game comes out or when they get a new battle tome. So they're not always easy, and they do get outdated sometimes with erratas.
Yeah.
But it is nice, I think, in these sets, if you're looking to teach someone how to play,
Yeah.
to have it out instead of like sheets of paper. And in terms of like easiness of these cards, I mean, they're not terrible. You've got your move, your save, your bravery, your wounds on one side. Your little melee weapons, a good bit of text on them, but not always needed.
Yeah. I definitely prefer having those War Scroll cards out. I get overwhelmed pretty easily with all this stuff, and if I just have a War Scroll card that I can just, I've got a stack instead of having everything laid out at me all at once,
Right.
it makes it easier for me to follow.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about how this game gets you into the game. This is, again, a starter set to kind of get you to playing 3rd edition AOS. Let's talk about, is there a lot of ease of finding information? Do you find the book easy to read and kind of get started with?
So two things to talk about. You've got your core rule book with all the rules, and I mean the layout. I'm not crazy about the layout of this book.
Yeah, I'll speak as someone who used to play Age of Sigmar competitively in 2.0. I think 3.0's rule set is way more complex. It has way more additional stuff to it with the hero stuff and and maybe I'm just wrong in remembering it because it's been so long since I played this, back in 2.0, but it just feels like a lot of what we were doing when we were playing this out was me going, man, I don't actually remember this, and then having to go through, because, like, it used to be really simple. The old core rules used to be on 4 or 8 pages.
Yeah.
Now it's like that whole book is almost every single rule for playing.
Yeah.
Like multiple pages on everything.
Yeah, I mean it's like it. I will say the good thing about this book is it isn't hard to find what you need,
Right.
because it's pretty clearly labeled, and it does have a regular structure to it that makes sense. It's just a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's like 16 or 17 steps to an individual turn now.
Yeah.
To me, that just seems like it's great that they have all these options now. I think it really has expanded the game a lot in terms of what you can do. But in my personal opinion, sometimes it can be where I'm like, and again, I played 2.0, so again, this might be just my fault as someone who's trying to learn the 3.0 rules, but I forget so much of the hero phase stuff.
Yeah.
Like remembering, oh, every turn we both get a heroic action, and then I can do it's just a lot, I
Yeah.
think.
So the second part of my answer, as far as, like all these rules, is that in this, in the Warrior Edition book that comes with it, those tutorials, it's a start playing tutorial. The very first one is to teach you about the charge phase. And it does it by starting with just 3 models, 2 Gut
Yeah.
Rippas and a Vindictor. It teaches you how to charge and get in and start fighting. It's got a little bit about the attack sequence. Then you've got one about how to deal with movement, just regular movement. You've got one right after that about ranged attacks, and then you've got magic. Then you've got like a full round.
Yeah.
And I really do like that. It does it in small, bite-sized chunks, so that you don't get too overwhelmed in each phase. And just to throw this out there, if you haven't seen the video that Watch It Played did, they did an entire series, and this was on the Extremis box set.
Yeah.
But it's the same tutorial sequence where the 2 players took every single sequence and they played out everything. It's really easy to follow.
Right.
So you could see, if you watch that series of Watch It Played, it's a fantastic sequence.
Yeah. I really do think it does help to have those little mini missions. I think AOS is gotten more and more complex as the years have gone on, and I think it's important that it's a little bit easier to get into by breaking it up, like you said, in small chunks. Does this game require a lot of memorizing keywords, and how much of it is symbol based?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of symbols.
There's
I'll
not
say
symbols.
that.
Yeah. I mean, the only symbols that you're going to see are like the heroic actions.
Yeah.
And and honestly, you don't really have to memorize those. They pop up on the rules reference sheet, and they pop up in the in the core rule book. But I mean, it's not really symbols as
Right.
much as it's text.
Yeah. And I think this game is a game for people who, frankly, you better be ready to read. I mean,
Yeah.
some of these cards are very simple. Like this Knight Arcanum, if you look at it, it's got 2 abilities, and that's it. And then, like, the Vindicators only have really 2 really abilities here that are small, but some of these can be filled with text.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, it's keywords all over the
yeah,
place.
there's keywords on remembering things. There's a lot of just remembering what your characters do. I think AOS has slowly become more and more complex with its own units of letting them all
Yeah.
have a special ability or something. The Gut Rippas have an ability where basically they can yell at you with their shields to basically harm you before you charge and have
Yeah.
you minuses. I mean, they get abilities where if they they get killed, they can like explode and deal damage to you, or when they roll 6s, they just deal instant wounds and you don't get saves. That's kind of it in this set, but as a like forewarning of that, there I think is so much, and AOS is definitely a game of understanding your combos and understanding how it all works together.
All the synergy,
Right.
understanding synergy, and I have a lot of trouble with that. You know, just I'll just say, for a pure beginner, which I'm I'm really starting out this journey in terms of playing it.
Yeah.
I've been all about just building the models and painting the models, not really playing it. So I'm just starting out this journey. You know, if you're starting out this journey too, I kind of feel your pain.
Yeah.
There's a lot of keywords to remember.
Right. There's just a bunch to this, and I think that's something that AOS is good and bad about. You know, there's so much cool stuff you can do, but as a new player, it can be a lot if you're playing somebody who does know the rules. You know, I've come from a background of playing miniatures with AOS. Again, I played it in 1.0. I played it very heavily in 2.0. Kind of stepped away at 3.0 just due to my group not really playing it, but you know, there's so much finesse to it at times, and I think sometimes that can be a lot for people, especially when they themselves may not know as much of their own rules, and then also having an opponent who has a lot of rules and stuff for their abilities. Let's talk about the box itself. And so we'd already talked a little bit about how many missions there are to play. You know, we've got about 3 or 4 starter missions and then like a regular mission to play. But let's talk about average game length. I mean, what we did this set for as an introduction, I kind of helped me relearn 3.0 rules and kind of teach you. Took us what, like 30, 45 minutes?
Yeah, it did not take us long at all.
And that was just some bad dice. If we had rolled better, it could have been probably a little bit quicker. I think genuinely this is a fast-paced, really easy to learn kind of game with this set because there's not a whole lot.
Yeah. This is, I mean, and to go along with that, because it's so quick, because it's also not very representative of the entire experience. You're getting the basic rules, but you're not getting the full AOS game.
Right.
It's scratching the surface, but really, I mean, it's what a starter box probably should do.
It's very much, if we want to compare it, it feels very much like a quick start-esque version. Which is great because, again, I think if you really want to play AOS, you know, and as someone who's been in the miniature hobby for a long time, miniature games are not cheap and they're not easy to get into.
Right.
And I think if you want to try something and not splurge a bunch of money, this retails $50, $60. You can easily pick this up, split it with somebody if you want to split the models, and both have like kind of a little bit of a starter force. It's not a lot when it comes to the full game, but it is a good starting point if you've never played it.
Yeah.
In terms of this one, you know, we talk about already, you kind of understand this box is not really a complete AOS game. It's definitely on the smaller end. I mean, I think I did the math for both these warbands, and they're barely 300 points, and most games are around 2,000.
Right.
So, you know, if you're looking to expand from this, let's talk about it 2 different ways. You know, how do you think, if you were looking to expand, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit about with more experience on the army building side of it, kind of how I would go about it as well, too.
So I'm going to do this from the purely practical, total noob standpoint. Go to your local game shop.
Right.
Go to your game shop and say, "Hey, I got the Warrior Edition starter box, and I'm learning the rules." Find out if there's a group that plays, and just start talking to the people who play. Because I mean, I wouldn't be able to do this at all if it weren't for you teaching me.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. But expanding outward, start looking around at the at the kind of things that the different units do, and see what kind of game that you want to play. Get the free app, and you can see the different models, the different units, see their point values, find out what kind of games are being played at shops or whoever's playing, and just say, "Hey, I'm just starting. What's kind of a small point value game that we can play?"
Right. And we've talked about, if you listen to our podcast episode, the Path to Glory being around 600 as a starter. That's a really good way to do it. I'm going to go from a more competitive side if you're looking to play this game like from a competitive side. First off, I want to say, too, if you want to keep playing with these armies, that's totally fine. If you don't, you are going to have to do something a little bit different and buy into it. The big thing you'll need to remember is that AOS is a game it's an army game. It's not a skirmish game. It is built around a larger set of models. You're going to spend a good bit of money potentially to get your army. Some are cheaper than others. It just kind of really depends on what you want to play. Like Adam said, do your research if you can. There's a lot of free resources online that people go into battle tomes. You can look at the app. The app doesn't have everything because
Right.
it does want you to buy the books before it lets you see everything in there for free. But they have all the units pretty much for free. You just don't get all the abilities and things. But those are also, you can find people's reviews online that have
Yeah.
those. Look again, like Adam said, at what people around you are playing. If you're looking to get into this game and you don't have a community, I will say the Path to Glory rules, which are now free online, that's a good way to get into this at 600 points. Again, we said these are about 300. You know, it's very easy to move up and get another, couple of boxes and play that.
Yeah.
Or if you want to, 1,000 points is a good number to start with too. That's also a very tournament friendly level. I've seen a lot of 1,000 point events or even like team tournaments where both sides bring 1,000 points and they play together. So I think if you really want to get into this game, there's so much potential, and I think AOS has so much variety of what you want to play. Do your research. That's really what it boils
Yeah.
down to is find what you want to play. If you want to play these, that's great. If you don't, that's also okay.
Yeah. At least this gave you a chance to figure out what the rules were.
Right.
The basic rules.
And I think these two forces they give you are very limited in what they have for rules, which is helpful.
Yeah.
Talk about, could you take these models to events? Yes, you could, but this isn't an
Yeah,
army.
it's not.
Like,
It's not going to be it.
this isn't enough for most. You might be able to play their Warcry game with this amount of models.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know about this force having enough points. That one probably would, definitely.
Yeah.
But you could potentially do that. Again, this is really a starter. This is like, I just want to start out with the minimal amount of investment.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. But also understand that, like, this is, and Adam put it great where he was like, this is not the full AOS experience. This is a scaled down version that's here to teach you the base rules.
Yeah.
In terms of who this box set is for,
It's for people like me who have
Yeah.
no idea what they're doing. Before I bought this and before we played, I'd played a couple of games of AOS second edition. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah,
I didn't really have a chance to learn the game. It was just throwing me in. It's like, hey, roll these dice. Okay, this is what you have, and I didn't know why I had what I had.
yeah, it's hard, I think, sometimes too, because my group was very competitive heavy, very much, and so it was like,
And they were very good and quick
Yeah.
at knowing pretty much everything. So, and I'd played like one other time with a friend, and he had so much stuff and wanted to show me everything, and honestly, is like I wanted to learn everything, but I was just like, it's
Yeah.
too much, But it was just like it's for people like me who don't really have a good grasp of the rules, want to stick my toe in,
Yeah.
just to figure out if I'm going to test the waters just a little bit. And I mean, if that's what you want to do and try building models, painting models, learning the rules, it's a perfect set.
I think, yeah,
Like
definitely.
$50 and like $50 American, and you're good to go, at least with a small game.
I think if you're a seasoned person coming into this, if you're playing both of these armies, this might actually be cheaper if you're looking to pick up some more Vindicators and maybe the Knight Arcanum,
Yeah.
which is difficult actually to find sometimes, some of these Stormcast heroes, so this might be good.
Like a unit of gut rippers, isn't that like $50?
I won't say, because I don't know 100% if it's
I
like
think
40 or
it's-
50.
But it's still like,
Yeah.
for all of these you pay $50, but I'm pretty sure like maybe gut rippers by themselves are about $50.
Yeah, most units can be upwards of 40 or $50, so it's
Yeah.
not surprising. I will say that is really good value out of this. Again, if you play Stormcast or you play Cruel Boys, if you don't play them, there's probably not a lot in here
Yeah.
for you, unless you want a small rule book, which is kind of cool to have, and maybe the rules reference. But again, if you're a seasoned player, you probably have all that, or you can find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not really for. There's not a lot of value in this if you don't play these armies.
Correct.
I think that's really
Yeah.
the big way to play it.
I think that's dead on.
Yeah. And then for our final question about it, would you keep playing based on this box? And I think we should each answer this because I think
So I bought this set with the purpose of, playing more. But I think if I have a friend who, is wanting to try this too, I think this actually is a good set to try out what this game is about.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I was still wanting to play, the Cruel Boys and Stormcast Eternals, probably so.
I will say that this box is good for teaching you how to play. I don't know if it has enough in it to hold everyone. Personally,
Yeah.
it's such a small representation, and I think you have to come into this game with that mindset. If
Yeah.
you come into it saying the whole AOS experience is this, it's not.
Yeah.
It's very much a small, very bite-sized chunk of it. So understand that going into it. I like this set. I wish it had a little bit more in terms of units. For the price, it's good. And I think if you're looking again, you really, really just want to see the bare bones of how to play AOS. You can't beat a $60 thing. That's pretty easy to jump into, get to know, and not be a total investment. Because if you don't like it, you paid $60. You got some cool D&D.
50 is actually
50 or 60
list
bucks.
price like 50.
Yeah, you're paying $50-$60. You got some cool models you can use. Like these guys are great for like D&D, like knights or whatever. And then there's some cool Orc models you can use. Like it's just it's fun. It's got some cool models in it. And if you don't love it, you don't love it. But overall,
you didn't lose a lot.
right? You're not
also.
spending a lot, like $200 something on something, which a lot of the other starter sets do, which have more in it. But that's our whole review for the Warrior set. For, again, the Warrior Edition starter set for AOS 3rd Edition. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you actually checked it out, let us know down in the comments and tell us, did you think it was a really good way to get into it? And then also, if you do play AOS, what army do you play? Talk about, if this would have been a good buy-in or not for you to kind of test out and see the waters. But like I said, I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, I'm Bryce.
I'm Adam.
And we thank you again. Y'all take care.
Bye.